So you're now at TFP. Is it the same challenge, a different challenge than what you had at Helping Hands? Because, on the one stage you're looking at care. The other stage, it's now about actually providing people with the opportunity to have a baby that might not be able to naturally.
Absolutely. I think it's very different, but there are a lot of similarities. Often our patients have been through quite a lot up until the point that they come and talk to us.
What's the future hold for Mark Beavan? What are you going to do next?
Well, nobody knows what the future holds, but I am really, really happy.
What's the one thing that people wouldn't know about you?
Most people don't know that I actually run a scuba diving club in Birmingham. I've been chairman of the BUEC now for, this will be my 5th term. Working in the fertility sector is incredibly rewarding. Everything from seeing the patients come out when they've had their first scan with a successful pregnancy to meeting some of those babies when they bring them into reception after they've had the success.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Automated Analytics podcast. Today I've got the chance to sit down with Mark Beavan. He's been in marketing for 15 years, has worked for brands like Empower, Phones for You, and TFP Fertility. Now, he is a Birmingham City fan, but don't let that put you off watching this episode because he goes into great detail about the changes in Google Ads and Consent 2, which Google have recently bought out. Don't forget, if you like this episode, do like and subscribe at the end. Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Automated Analytics podcast. I'm delighted to welcome Mark Beavan to the studio. Mark has been in marketing almost as long as me, and he's also called Mark as well. So you've been in marketing for 15 years now. How has it changed?
How's it changed? So I sort of got into marketing originally when Google Ads sort of was first coming about, was given a role managing both what was Bing, Yahoo and Google Ads for paid search was my first job in marketing. And it was very manual. I remember when the ad manager came out, which meant that you could do things offline and upload them. And there was lots of late nights trying to make big changes, write ads, very, very manual process. I think nowadays marketing has changed in that we now have technology, which means we can automate a lot of the things that we do, but also we leave a lot of our decision making up to algorithms more now, which at first is quite scary. But I think it's meant that we're able to drive much better performance and it focus more on the things that matter.
My first job, which was in 1997, which was for Regal Hotels, performance marketing wasn't really, we didn't use that phrase at all, but it feels like it's a phrase that's come more and more into marketing, and particularly with the changes we've had. You've had COVID, people are requiring a greater performance from their marketing, and it feels like marketing's shifted into being performance marketing.
I would absolutely agree. I think the big change that I've seen, particularly when been approached for senior roles, is that they are looking for somebody who's got performance marketing background, but not just somebody that has flisted around the edges and managed agencies. They're looking for somebody that knows what they're doing, looking for somebody that's willing to get into the detail, but also able to strategically drive those channels in the right direction to get the outcome that's required. Performance marketing is now a massive lion's share of what marketers do.
And that return on advertising, that really has become like the key metric for performance marketers today.
It has, yeah. I mean, depending on your sector, I suppose, yeah.
So you started 15 years ago, but you started actually with Phones for You, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. But I remember when I was in health clubs, we'd love hiring people from Phones for You because their training was amazing for salespeople.
It was, and for my sins, I did start in the call centre straight out of university, needed a job, didn't quite want to go home back with my parents, so I decided, managed to get this job at the call centre at Phones for You in the head office. Did that for a short period of time, decided that wasn't for me. And that I wanted to use the degree that I'd spent lots of money and lots of time studying. So I somehow ended up moving over into the digital team, which at the time I think was called the online team. The manager over there sort of said, look, we need somebody to come and manage our Google ad accounts and Bing and Yahoo. And I went, well, what are they? Didn't really know much about it, and that's sort of where I cut my cloth. Really, I was pretty much thrown into the deep end. I was given some really good training. I had, really good manager at the time, and that's where I really cut my cloth, I think, and fell in love, I suppose, with the world of marketing and particularly performance marketing.
So you recently, obviously, in the last 6 years, have moved into healthcare. So obviously, it's a change from like Phones for You. I think you then went to Empower, and then you last 6 years been in healthcare. Why the move into healthcare?
Well, I suppose, I love my time at Empower. It was fantastic, really great people, great company to work for. And the best thing was it was on my doorstep about a mile away from where I lived. So I had a really good work-life balance, which is invaluable, really. But I think when I left there was because of the takeover of Empower by Eon. And ultimately, that meant that was sort of my end of my career there. I ended up going into the home care sector for Helping Hands, and it really changed the way that I thought about my job. Previously, it had been about, I always wanted to progress, I've always wanted to learn. But then suddenly I had a product here that I became really, really passionate about. And I think that's why now I can't really see myself not working in healthcare, particularly because I'm really proud to talk about it. So for me, it's being able to tell somebody what I do for a living and be really proud about the product that we offer or the service that we offer. So Helping Hands, it was all about, helping elderly people in their own homes, ultimately for them to stay at home. What more of a nice thing to do? Ultimately, we were a private business trying to make money, but we were doing a really nice thing. And to see the difference that the carers were making and to be a part of that was really important to me. And more recently moved to TFP Fertility, where we help people have babies. And again, for me, it's those patient stories, it's those outcomes that really drive me.
So tell me about TFP, what they do, who they are as a business. I know them, but not everybody might know them listening to this podcast.
So TFP Fertility Group have been helping patients make families for the last 35 years. We have 11 clinics across 3 countries. 8 of those are in the UK. We have a couple in Poland and one in the Netherlands as well. And we have a bunch of satellite clinics as well that support them. Ultimately, we are here to help people create families. But the other part of what we do as well is things like preservation, and we offer people the opportunity to donate as well and help another family. So that's who TFP are.
And it's fascinating because I myself have been through the IVF experience. Unfortunately, it wasn't successful. We went down the adoption route and adopted my son, Joshi. But you are literally providing, people with the opportunity to have a family, to have a baby that wouldn't naturally be able to.
Absolutely. And it's amazing once I started in the role, how many friends and friends of friends, or the guy you're sat next to or talking to at a conference suddenly will tell you everything about their experience. And it's incredible that people don't talk about these things, and actually suddenly once you work in the sector, everyone wants to tell you about their experience. So I think probably a lot of listeners today will relate to that and go, well, I've been through this and haven't really talked about it.
And it's interesting because you're right. It's very much experience you go through yourself with your partner, and certainly when we've spoken about it, it's amazing. When you're at school or when you're younger, you think conceiving and having a family is dead easy. It just happens, but it's not like that for everybody, is it?
No, and that's not the reality. Unfortunately, the fertility rates are decreasing, and there are challenges around that. I think people are staying in there. More females are having careers now and are wanting to focus on those, and then leaving having kids to when they're a bit older, which has its challenges. I won't go into too much medical information about that, but ultimately that's where recently we've been focusing on things like preservation. So for me, that is one, yes, it's another revenue stream for us, but ultimately if we can get people to preserve their eggs earlier, then they have a much better chance if they do plan to have a family in the future. So it's something that people should consider.
Just talking about Helping Hands for a second, I loved the brand story that you told me, because you almost envisaged a customer, and would almost every decision that you made as a business was, well, would it suit that customer? Is that right?
Yeah. So I think the journey in the healthcare, journey in the home care sector is usually a reasonably short one, because something triggers it. So it's usually mum's had a fall, something's happened, and suddenly we need help. So you go from not knowing anything about a service to wanting to know as much as possible, because this is going to be looking after somebody that means a lot to you. So what's really important in the home care sector is giving people the right information, useful information in an empathetic way, and make them feel like that they've got the information they need to make an informed decision.
So, Mark, when you're at Helping Hands, I was fascinated by almost the brand story, which we talked about, performance marketing. But this is where you had essentially what you termed to me was the granny test that really drove a lot of what you delivered from a brand. Talk us through what exactly happened.
So it was our CEO at the time that implemented the granny test. And the granny test was basically if you have an idea, or you want to go and do, or you're going to do something, or you're making a decision, all the way through the business, from right at the top all the way through to a carer on the ground. If you weren't sure about that decision that you were making, you applied the granny test, which was, would my granny be proud of this? And if the answer was no, you probably shouldn't do it. And if the answer was yes, it's probably the right decision. So that was sort of and that meant that, one, it enabled people to make decisions quickly, but also people applied that filter to it. And because we worked in an organisation that ultimately helped out elderly people, it fitted really nicely with that as well. So,
and I think that to me was a great kind of demonstration of as you say, the granny test, whether it's a customer test. Not every business makes decisions based on that kind of filtering process, but that's what fascinated me about your time at Helping Hands was passing the granny test, as it were. So just cycling forward a little bit. So you're now at TFP, and I'm guessing is it the same challenge, a different challenge than what you had at Helping Hands? Because on the one stage you're looking at care, the other stage it's now about actually providing people with the opportunity to have a baby that might not be able to naturally.
Absolutely, I think it's very different, but there are a lot of similarities. Obviously, it's the other end of life, but it is a highly emotional purchase. Ultimately, people who are coming to us are looking to get help, ultimately conceiving. So often our patients have been through quite a lot up until the point that they come and talk to us. And it's similar in a lot of ways to what I talked about with home care, is that you go from not knowing very much about a service or something to wanting to know absolutely everything really, really quickly. The differences between home care and what we do at TFP Fertility is that the research journey is much longer. So it can be up to 6 months of research before somebody gives us a call. So, very different in that respect.
But also giving people a chance to have a baby, a family, when they haven't got that opportunity naturally. That must be a big motivator. That must be a big driver.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And I mean, when we're in the clinics, looking through the glass and seeing the guys in the labs do what they do is, it's just simply incredible. So yes, working in the fertility sector is incredibly rewarding. For everything from seeing the patients come out when they've had their first scan with a successful pregnancy, to meeting some of those babies when they bring them into reception after they've had the success. And we have the privilege of in marketing actually doing sort of patient stories as well, trying to bring those stories to life for other people. I think that's one of the things that we've really been focusing on, the marketing team, is going, how do we open the curtain for people to be able to see what actually happens? One, from a patient's perspective, what actually is that journey like, but also what's happening in the labs, what's happening in the theatres, what's it like to be in a consultation, all that sort of stuff. So for me, it's an incredible privilege to work in the fertility sector. And, you know, I'm incredibly passionate about how we try and bring engaging content, but also content that makes people feel much more comfortable before they come into a clinic. As you can imagine, the first time entering a fertility clinic is probably an incredibly difficult thing to do. Lots of anxiety, lots of questions, not sure what to expect. And I, like I said, feel privileged to be able to hopefully help people feel a little bit better before that happens.
And I think, as you say, it's your marketing role is very different because it's very much an education piece as much as it is about driving that performance. So just circling back to Google Ads, I mean, you probably remember when it was called Google AdWords. I think it was when it first came out.
Name changed.
Yeah, allegedly.
I'm still calling it Webmaster Tools as well. So, you know,
yes, yeah, Google Console.
Yeah, Google Console.
So what's interesting is I remember the days when you could go into a Google Ads account or an AdWords account and make significant changes to improve the performance. But pretty much Google's stripped that back now. Is that what you're seeing?
So where they've gone from is, yes, a manually managed account. So you would adjust the bids on different keywords, you would set your ads up, you would do all of that sort of stuff. And majority of that hasn't changed. You set up your ads, you set up your keywords, you set up your ad groups and your campaigns. The difference is now that first it was automated bidding, then we've moved into things like PMAX, which is another type of automated bidding, but includes various different ad types, to, you know, the new AI Max that's just released, which is really exciting as well. And I think the difference being is, as somebody who was originally working on accounts when we used to manually do them, I remember the switch over to automated bidding, and I was thinking, there's no way that they can do it better than a human, particularly when you've got a big account and it's really complex. There's no way. You know, we did the test, it beat us. We then rolled it out to the whole account, and we haven't really looked back, or I haven't really looked back in any account that I've managed since, really. And now that we've got things like PMAX, what's now much more important in an account is not necessarily, you know, spending all of that time sort of looking at individual bids. Actually, it's about what data you feed it now is absolutely key. If you don't feed it the right data, you're just not going to get the right outcome.
And I think that's the difference that we've seen is all about uploading those conversions. So you've got, if you like, traditional, what I would call call tracking, where they're counting the calls, but you're using AI to actually understand the intent and the outcome so that you're feeding Google the right conversion that you want to drive, rather than just, it's not just about a phone call, it's actually a phone call that leads to a sale at the end of the day. So with Google Ads, it seems very, very critical to be able to upload the right conversion. So you've got call tracking, which essentially counts the amount of calls that you have and counts the amount of form fills. How are you telling Google in the first instance, your main kind of inbound, if you like, lead generation is calls and predominantly form fills. So how are you using that data to make sure that Google is properly informed on the right conversion? Because if Google's moving to a model where it's all about the quality of conversion that you're uploading, how do you make sure that you're optimizing their campaign to drive sales rather than just calls or just form fills that go nowhere?
Absolutely. And I think we get tens of thousands of phone calls every month. So the key here is being able to identify which ones of those were new patients coming in. Starting from the beginning, ultimately, we want to drive, or my role is to drive more patients into the start of the journey. So my job is to get them to either call us or to fill in a form fill online or sign up for a webinar. So I've then got a finite amount of budget that I've got available to me, and I need to make that work really, really hard. First thing is going, right, okay, I need to be able to track my conversions, right? So I could quite easily track my form fills. That's really easy. I could track my webinars. That's pretty easy because that's online. I can track calls, click to call. But what I couldn't do was track total phone calls and match them back. So that's where the Call 360 tech came in. And I think what I really liked about the Call 360 product was that it didn't just do the dynamic call tracking, which essentially allows you to change the phone number on the website, attach it to a G-click and match it back to the particular keyword. So, that keyword was on that page and it drove a call, which is great, right? We want to drive calls, but when you drive tens of thousands of calls and actually only about 10% of those are new patients ringing you because they're interested in your service, you could quite easily end up optimizing your account towards customer service calls or to existing patients. And that's not necessarily, when you've got a finite budget, that's not what you want to do. So essentially using Call 360, we're able to transcript, remove personally identifiable information, work out what the outcome of that call was. So what was it? A warm lead? Was it a sale? Was it a patient booking in? Was it a returning patient? All these different things. And we're able to then go, right, we deem these to be high quality and therefore feed that back into AdWords with the G-click, match it back to the keyword, and ultimately then feed that back into the automated algorithms now that Google sort of force us to use. And what that allows us to do is, well, ultimately the better data that you give Google, the better outcome that you get.
And I think that's the thing that I saw is originally when we created automated analytics, we kept a lot of conversion data to ourselves because I didn't want Google to have it. Now it's about uploading as much good quality data as you can. And obviously the benefit to you is you're using AI to essentially, that manual process you just described, the AI just speeds it up and enables you to do that in infinite seconds.
Yes. And I think that there's other benefits to this as well. I mean, having AI looking at the contents of your calls and able to show you trends is also useful in other parts of the business as well. So identifying frequently asked questions that existing customers are ringing up about or existing patients are ringing up about because they maybe haven't had that answered when they'd come in clinic or hadn't had that answered when they had the initial phone call. If we're able to identify them, we can make sure that when those conversations happen at clinic or when those conversations happen with our call center, that ultimately it stops that repeat phone call. So it's not all about driving more phone calls. Actually, in one half, it's about actually we want to, ideally, if patients phoning us up for something, it's because they're unsure. We need to fix that, and this helps us do that as well.
So reducing those customer service calls as well as increasing sales calls, I guess what you say. Now, what's interesting about your lead generation model, so you're driving inbound calls, inbound fulfills, but obviously a big part of your operation is also doing the outbound call to qualify, if you like, that initial lead. And I think one of the successes you've had is being able to match that form fill, so not just counting the form fill as a conversion, but actually the quality of that form fill by matching the outbound call to that form fill.
Yeah, so we've now got all of the data. So we are tracking the outbound phone call and we have the form fill. We've still got to do some clever stuff to bring the two together, but we're now tracking that, which is going to be really interesting. So tracking and using AI to transcript the outbound call and identify whether it was successful or not. Yes.
So we talked about performance marketing earlier. Clearly you've got targets to meet. What success have you seen so far?
So we have been able to scale the spend on our account significantly, meaning that because we're feeding in the right data, we are able to get more conversions out of our ad accounts. That means that the algorithms are learning and then we'll be able to serve more ads. That's meant we were able to spend more, which sounds terrible. We don't spend more, but ultimately we spend more and get more. So we were able to drive up our volume of leads and drive down our cost per call or cost per form fill by doing this.
So for a marketeer, actually getting an increase in budget, that's almost unheard of because usually the marketing budget is the first one to go if there's any cuts. So how have you been able to increase the marketing spend?
So I think being able to prove that we are feeding in the right information and prove that by increasing the amount we spend on a particular campaign, we're able to show that we're going to get more leads and ultimately the business is going through growth. We have clinics that we need to fill and ultimately want to help as many patients as possible. So by having the right information showing that we're measuring things correctly, it becomes much easier to get additional spend.
And I guess that as you say, that measuring that ROI, that return on investment, actually having hard data so there's no data gaps, you know exactly what you're getting from, whether it's you're spending £1 and getting 10 or 5 or whatever back. that must have been instrumental in that journey.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, right? This is the world of marketing tech. So the data is never perfect and it's not the full story. You know, not everybody accepts the cookies now. And we've got V2 that's come out and there's all sorts of different things that are impacting that. I think this is not necessarily about going, oh, I spend this pound and I get this. It's how you're using these as signals to drive the performance of your business. Ultimately, you put money in at the top and then you get output at the bottom in whatever business that you do. This bit in the middle, I think going back probably 5 or 6 years, you used to be able to track everything and it was much more transparent. That's becoming much more difficult now. So as a marketeer, your story is slightly different. It's not that just because something didn't drive a conversion doesn't mean it's bad. And particularly in the fertility sector, that would apply. I'll go back to what I said earlier. There's a huge research piece at the start of that journey. So there are lots of keywords, lots of searches, lots of pages on the site that probably won't drive a conversion. That doesn't mean that they're not really important in that conversion journey. So yes, we've got all of this data. Yes, it's really, really valuable. And yes, we're able to identify roughly what our CPA is and make sure that we're driving that in the right direction, but it's not the full story as well.
So you mentioned V2, which is Google's Consent V2, which they launched, I think it was around 21st of July 2025, which really, you know, is starting to limit how you can track people online because of we have GDPR here in the UK. But you take a very pragmatic view. How's Google Consent affected things for you, and how do you see the future of being able to track customers via online?
Well, I think lots of things have changed over the last couple of years. So, you know, the bringing in of the of cookies and, you know, having to have certain things on your cookie banner and having to make sure that you get explicit consent around marketing. And now it's, you know, there are more and more tools out there that are going to cookieless. So people are finding ways around it. Marketeers will always find a way, right? So, but going back to what I said before, it's never the full story. This is about, and nowadays it's all about finding signals that point your algorithms to in the right direction. So it doesn't need to be perfect. This is about trends. This is about making sure that trend is going in the right direction. It doesn't matter whether you're tracking 100 or 200. You know, you might be getting 200 sales and you're only putting 100 through your account. As long as that number is going up, it's all about those trends really. So although yes, tracking is getting harder, I think nothing really changes from my perspective.
So what advice would you give to a fellow marketeer who has got that struggle of, right, how do I work out what my ROI is? How do I work out what my return on advertising spend is? Where do they start?
There's ways in which you can track things. There is technology out there. Call 360 is a good example of that. Talk to, you know, your peers, talk to find out what other people are doing. For me personally, it's all about talking to other people, finding out what other tech, what they're doing, what challenges they've solved. And for me, it's, you know, that's where I get all of my inspiration and
now,
interest.
Delving into you as a person, you are actually a Blues fan. Small Heath United, for those that don't know. And I'm an Aston Villa fan. And I don't know if I can take you back when we first met 4 or 5 years ago. I remember your closing remark to me was, as long as you're not an Aston Villa fan, because I'll never buy from an Aston Villa fan. So what changed? What made you choose us?
Well, yes, no, really great piece of tech, yes. So first of all, they were called Small Heath Alliance before they changed the name to Birmingham City. Yes. So you probably want to get your facts right before you start there.
Well, they're a couple of divisions below us, so we don't. Aston Villa don't take that.
Yeah, we're in that league that you were in a few years
attention.
ago. Yes.
Although I have to say, the best games are always Villa Blues. They were the best games ever.
They were. They are, yes, and they will be again, I imagine, hopefully soon. Either way, with you in the Championship next season or with us in the Premier League.
So you've got Tom Brady, who's part of your ownership team. What does he bring to Birmingham City?
I think he brings a lot of energy and some money, which is really, really useful. So, along with Super Chris, they seem to be doing a good job. They've got us, up into the Championship, and we've had a good start. So,
And do you think, is Birmingham City ready for that step up to the Premier League? Because, as you say, I would love, even though I'm an Aston Villa fan, I would love City to be in the Premier League, because I think the Premier League is about, the big, I think traditional teams, like I'm pleased that Leeds are in the Premier League, Forest are in the Premier League. It needs those big cities being represented, and Birmingham's part of that at the end of the day. Are they ready to get to the Premier League?
Well, we'll see this season, I think. I think we need to be realistic about our goals. I would love to see us back in the Premier League as quickly as possible. But yeah, we'll have to see, won't we?
When Aston Villa were in the Championship, and I still believe this today, it was super competitive. We were in there for 2 seasons, and, every game you could win or lose it. Is Championship still like that for Birmingham City?
Yeah, well, look, it's an incredibly physical league. It's very different to the Premier League, and it's why a lot of teams end up bouncing between the two leagues a lot. It's Premier League's an increasingly challenging league to move into. One, from a financial perspective, but two, just the quality of the teams at the top of the table. But it's great to see Villa back where they belong, down in the relegation zone. So.
Great, where we belong in the relegation zone. Oh yeah, won't be for long. Although we haven't scored a goal this season, which I think is a record. First 3 Premier League games, are still yet to score a goal,
and haven't won a trophy for a while either.
But we're still European champions from '82. We all remember that, Mark. We all remember European champions. So, who's the one player that you would want Birmingham City to buy today, and then who's the one player, if they got into the Premier League, who would you buy?
Good question. Well, I'm hoping, I don't know when this podcast will go out, but I'm hoping by the time it does, we'll have secured Mitrovic. Maybe. Depends if we can afford his wages coming back from Saudi. So we'll have to see. Who would I? So
you'd like Mitrovic in Championship. So
yes.
Ex-Fulham, great player, but a great Championship player. I think I could do a very good job for Birmingham City, I must admit.
Yes.
So let's say you get promoted to the Premier League. Who's the one player which Birmingham City would get if they got promoted?
I think controversially, I'd say Isaac, prolific goal scorer.
Just gone to Liverpool. Forced to move from Newcastle.
Absolutely. I believe he bought his house in Liverpool before it was all sorted and basically said, I'm not playing. So yeah, he's got what he wanted. But yeah, sounds like it's hard work, but he certainly does the business, doesn't he? So for me, it'd probably be Isaac.
And I think in the Premier League, you need a proven goal scorer, as Villa are finding out at the moment, having not scored any goals in the first three games season. Come on, Ollie. We know you can put the ball in the back of the net. We just need you to find that net sooner rather than later. So just to finish off, and it's been fascinating to find about you and obviously your love for Birmingham City. What's the future hold for Mark Beavan? What are you going to do next?
Well, nobody knows what the future holds, but I am really, really happy where I'm working right now. I think TFP Fertility's got, great people, real great purpose, and there is so much to do and so much more that we could do to improve the business across the board, but particularly in the sales and marketing function that I'm in.
Excellent stuff. And finally, just before we sign off, one final question from me. What's the one thing that no one knows about you that you can tell us about today?
I suppose professionally, most people don't know that in my spare time, I actually run a scuba diving club in Birmingham. I know, Birmingham, landlocked, probably the least place that you'd expect to have a scuba diving club. But yes, so I've been chairman of the BUEC now for, this will be my 5th term. So really been trying to drag the club into 21st century, look at, and we've seen huge growth in members, much more active club. Really, really enjoyed that. And, it's a thing that I enjoy doing in my spare time as well.
So what attracted you to scuba diving?
Sorry?
What attracted you to scuba diving?
Originally, scuba diving was something that I did abroad. You go abroad and you go to the local sports centre of the hotel and go and do like what's called like a tri dive or whatever. And then a friend of mine sort of said, I fancy, he went and did the course, and then we decided to do a holiday. So that then forced me to have to go and get the qualification. Decided that, I didn't want to do it while I was away because I wanted to focus on the holiday while I was away. and that's when I found the BUEC, who taught me to dive in the UK, which is, I suppose, much less sexy than diving in, the Maldives and the Caribbean. But
a swimming pool in Birmingham is less desirable than the Maldives. You're
absolutely.
kidding me.
And in the local quarries, there's lots to see, but it's slightly darker and colder, I suppose, than the diving that I really enjoy.
Excellent stuff. Mark, it's been great having you guest. Thank you so much for giving us insight, not only into Google Ads, but you personally. I do wish Birmingham City the best this season. Thank you very much for appearing on today's episode.
No worries. Thank you.